The customer is always right, until they're catastrophically, hilariously wrong. We've collected 101 of the most unhinged, brain-dead one-star reviews ever left in the US. These aren't just complaints, they are monuments to incompetence, written by people who blame the moon for being too bright and a hammer for being too hard. This is a tribute to glorious human failure. 1. Imagine being mad at a survival whistle for being loud. Someone left a one-star review for an emergency whistle, complaining that it hurt their ears when they blew it. That's the entire point. It's designed to be heard over an avalanche, not to gently summon your butler from the next room. 2. The Grand Canyon, a literal wonder of the world, was not impressive enough for one tourist. 1 star. The reason? It was just a big hole, and the visitor was deeply disappointed that there was no Starbucks or Wi-Fi at the bottom. Nature. You really need to step up your amenities game. 3. Here's a 1-star review for a vegan cookie recipe that perfectly captures the internet. The person proudly announced they had substituted all the vegan ingredients for real butter, milk, and eggs, and then complained that the cookies were no longer vegan. That's not a flawed recipe. It's a failed IQ test. 4. You know those glowing green exit signs? One of them received a 1-star review on Google. The user complained that the sign was constantly pointing towards a door and offered no other suggestions for where to go. They were apparently looking for life advice from a legally mandated safety feature. 5. A person bought a mirror online and gave it a single star. The verbatim review was, "The object in the mirror is uglier than I am." I mean, what can you even say to that? That's not a product defect, my friend. That's a conversation you need to have with your parents. 6. This one's a masterpiece of delusion. A furious 1-star review for a scented candle because it didn't light itself. The buyer genuinely thought it was supposed to ignite using the power of the scent alone. Sir, this is a candle from Walmart, not a magical artifact from Diagon Alley. 7. Someone left a 1-star review for a local county jail. This former guest critiqued his stay as if it were a Hilton, complaining about the lumpy mattress, lack of room service, and bland food. Sorry, your government-mandated consequences weren't a 5-star all-inclusive experience. 8. A visitor to the Statue of Liberty gave it 1 star because it was green. They were genuinely angry that it wasn't the shiny copper color from old photographs, literally complaining about the natural chemical process of oxidation. We'll get right on power washing that for you. 9. The reviews for sugar-free gummy bears are a special kind of hell. This 1-star epic detailed a gastrointestinal event of biblical proportions, describing the aftermath in horrific detail. They wrote as if they'd survived a natural disaster, not a 10-cent candy. Maybe read the warning label next time? 10. A user left an enraged 1-star review for a pregnancy test. The reason? It gave a positive result. They weren't claiming it was inaccurate. They were just furious about the news it delivered. That's like blaming the weatherman for a hurricane. The messenger has been shot. 11. A 1-star review for a high-powered blender complained that it aggressively obliterated their smoothie. They were expecting a gentle swirl, not a fruit-pocalypse in a jar. They essentially bought a V8 engine and got mad it didn't perform like a golf cart. Some people just want to be disappointed. 12. Someone left a 1-star review for a bottle of Tide Pods, lamenting their horrible chemical taste. The user was genuinely expecting a burst of fruity flavor. At this point, the warning labels aren't just for legal reasons. They're a desperate plea to save the human race from itself. 13. An SPF 50 sunscreen received 1 star because the user didn't get a tan. They carefully applied a product designed to block the sun's rays, and then expressed outrage when it successfully blocked the sun's rays. The sheer lack of object permanence is honestly impressive. 14. A local cemetery received a 1-star review for its lack of atmosphere and unfriendly residents. The person complained that nobody was talking and the whole place felt dead. Well, you're not wrong. The self-awareness level here is technically subterranean. 15. Here's a single star for a roll of heavy-duty duct tape because it was too sticky and ripped the hair off my arm. What were you expecting? A gentle caress? It's industrial-grade adhesive, not a soothing lotion. The product did its job with extreme prejudice, as advertised. 16. The Merriam-Webster dictionary was slammed with a 1-star review for having way too many characters and absolutely no plot. They even suggested the author should focus on a single storyline next time. You have to respect the audacity of critiquing the literal building blocks of language. 17. A tourist gave the Eiffel Tower a 1-star review because it was just a really tall, pointy metal thing. They were profoundly unimpressed, as if expecting it to do a trick or something. It's tough to appreciate a global icon when your expectations are apparently set by a Michael Bay movie. 18. A parent left a furious 1-star review for an ant farm because the ants refused to farm and instead just wandered around aimlessly. They were anticipating tiny ant-sized tractors and a fall harvest. Sorry to break it to you, but their only job is to exist and then die. 19. A bottle of ghost pepper hot sauce, clearly labeled with a skull and crossbones, got a 1-star review for being painfully spicy. The reviewer was shocked that it burned their mouth. Every single visual cue screamed danger, yet they still plunged headfirst into the inferno. 20. Someone bought a single red brick from a hardware store and left a 1-star review stating it didn't do anything. It's a brick. Its entire resume is hard and is rectangular. What kind of performance were you hoping for? A song and dance number. 21. The entire concept of subtitles was a personal attack on one moviegoer. They left a 1-star review for a foreign film because it wasn't in English and I had to read the whole time. Congratulations, you've discovered how the rest of the world has been watching American blockbusters for the last century. 22. This is a classic. 1 star for a local library because it was too quiet, and the librarian kept shushing them. They went to a building specifically designed for silent reading, and then got angry about the enforcement of silent reading. The mind truly boggles. 23. A fire alarm in an apartment building received a 1-star review on Google because it was annoyingly loud when it went off. The person also complained it interrupted my nap. I'm sorry that the device designed to save your life from a fire was a minor inconvenience. 24. Someone gave a cactus a 1-star review because it was too sharp and unpleasant to cuddle. They bought a plant famous for its defensive spikes and were disappointed it didn't want to be their new teddy bear. Some lessons just have to be learned the hard way. 25. An ATM got a scathing 1-star review because it dispensed a $20 bill that was wrinkled. Not counterfeit, not torn, just wrinkled. The sheer entitlement required to get angry at a machine for the cosmetic condition of your free money is almost inspiring. 26. A person reviewed a new bridge with 1 star, complaining that it just takes you to the other side of the river. They were expecting… what exactly? A portal to another dimension? A scenic detour through Narnia? Its job description is literally in its name. 27. A self-help book titled The Power of Positive Thinking received a 1-star review from a reader who said it didn't magically solve all my problems. They read a book and were upset when their life didn't instantly transform. This might be why they needed the book in the first place. 28. This one is art. A user gave a blank notebook a 1-star review because it was empty. They opened a book with 0 words in it and were disappointed to find 0 words in it. The product delivered exactly what was promised. 20 pages of pure, unadulterated nothing. 29. A tourist in Yellowstone National Park left a 1-star review because the wild bears wouldn't come close enough to the car for a good picture. They were genuinely upset that massive, unpredictable predators weren't cooperating for a photo op. Darwin is weeping somewhere. 30. Apparently, not even celestial bodies are safe. Someone left a 1-star review for the moon, complaining it was too bright, and kept them awake. They also criticized its inconsistent shape and unreliable schedule. The cosmos has been officially put on notice by a disgruntled customer. 31. A 1-star review for a car because the check engine light came on. The driver was furious, calling it a distracting and annoying feature. They didn't have a problem with the actual engine, just the dashboard light that was dutifully warning them about the engine problem. 32. A water park was blasted with 1 star because the customer got completely soaked. They were apparently outraged that going down a water slide resulted in significant contact with water. The entire review is a stunning testament to someone who fundamentally missed the whole point. 33. Someone bought a hammer and gave it 1 star for being defective and dangerous. Why? Because they hit their own thumb with it and blamed the tool's poor ergonomic design. This is a level of personal accountability so low, it's practically drilling into the Earth's core. 34. A non-stick pan received a 1-star review because the coating came off after 1 use. Buried in the comment, the reviewer admitted to using a metal fork to aggressively scramble their eggs. That's like keying your own car and then complaining about the quality of the paint job. 35. A 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle was savaged with a 1-star review for being too difficult and confusing. The user was expecting a more straightforward experience. You literally bought a box of chaos with the explicit goal of conquering it. The difficulty is the feature. 36. A tourist gave Mount Rushmore 1 star because the back is not finished. They were genuinely disappointed that the artist didn't bother to carve the back of the president's heads into a giant granite mountain. Some people's expectations are, quite literally, monumental. 37. A diet and exercise book received a 1-star review because the user didn't lose any weight. When another commenter asked if they followed the plan, they replied, "I haven't had time to read it yet." They expected the weight to come off through sheer osmosis, apparently. 38. This one comes from a ski resort in Colorado. A 1-star review in the middle of January because the snow was unpleasantly cold and wet. What's next? A bad review for the sun because it's too bright. This person is waging a personal war against the laws of nature. 39. Here's a 1-star review for a premium steak knife set. The reason? The knives were dangerously sharp, and the user almost cut themselves. They purchased a tool specifically engineered for effortless cutting, and were appalled when it turned out to be good at its one job. 40. Someone gave their weather app a 1-star review because it accurately predicted rain, which subsequently ruined their picnic. They weren't mad that the forecast was wrong, they were mad that it was right. All they wanted was for the app to lie to them, I guess. 41. An audio course for learning Spanish got 1 star because the narrator spoke with a thick Spanish accent, making him hard to understand. The quest to learn a foreign language from someone who doesn't even speak it is a bold new frontier in human stupidity. 42. A furious 1-star review for a bag of whole coffee beans because they were not ground up. The person was livid they had to perform the extra step of, preparing the coffee. The sheer inconvenience of it all must have been absolutely devastating for them. 43. This is peak entitlement. A 1-star review for a scratch-off lottery ticket because it wasn't a winner. They gambled $1 on a 1 in a million chance, lost, and then treated it like a defective product. This person does not understand the concept of gambling. 44. Someone left a 1-star review for a silent dog whistle, claiming it was broken because no sound came out when I blew into it. The word silent is right there in the product description. This isn't a product review, it's a public confession of not being able to read. 45. A tourist at a national park gave it 1 star because a wild deer stole a sandwich right out of their hand. They were outraged by the aggressive local staff and demanded better training for the fauna. We'll be sure to schedule an HR meeting for the forest creatures immediately. 46. A 1-star review for a TV remote because it stopped working. The reviewer was furious, calling it a cheap piece of junk that died without warning. After a lengthy rant, they added a small update. Never mind, the batteries were dead, but my point still stands. The refusal to admit fault is almost more impressive than the initial stupidity. 47. An escape room received a scathing review because the experience was stressful, and they felt trapped inside a room. They paid for a simulated high-stakes puzzle under a time limit and then complained about the simulation being effective. Some people just want to be unhappy. 48. Someone gave birthday candles a one-star review because they melted all over the cake. They lit sticks of wax on fire and were somehow completely blindsided by the outcome. It's a race against time. That's the whole candle-based thrill of the birthday experience. 49. A review for a standard pair of scissors claimed they were impossible to use. The reviewer later added an update. My left-handed friend just told me I was using them upside down. Still, it should have been more obvious. The scissors can't fix everything, I suppose. 50. A trampoline was given 1 star because, and this is a direct quote, falling down hurts. The user loved the going up part, but was bitterly disappointed by the inevitable return trip. They have essentially filed a formal complaint against the concept of gravity itself. 51. The entire purpose of an alarm clock for heavy sleepers is to be obnoxious. So when someone left 1 star complaining it was startlingly loud and woke them up in a panic, they weren't reviewing the product. They were just publicly confessing that it worked perfectly. 52. Imagine writing a 1-star review for a local business because you couldn't get inside. The reviewer detailed their Herculean effort to pull the door open, calling it defective. The owner's response was simple: a photo of the giant, unmissable sign on the door that read, "Push." 53. At what point does a product working as intended become a flaw? For one reviewer, it was a bar of soap. They gave it 1 star because it disappeared too quickly after a few weeks of use. They've essentially filed a formal complaint against the concept of being clean. 54. The screeching sound of windshield wipers on a dry day is awful. One user agreed, giving the wipers 1 star for that exact reason. After some questioning, they admitted they were only using them when it wasn't raining. This isn't a product review, it's a cry for help. 55. You have to respect the honesty. A "Beware of Dog" sign on a fence received a 1-star review on Google Maps. The complaint? The dog was, in fact, something to be wary of. The sign did its one job, and its reward was a public shaming for its accuracy. 56. What happens when you go to a history museum expecting an Apple store? You get this 1-star review, complaining the museum was just full of old, dusty stuff. The profound disappointment of finding history in a history museum is a uniquely modern tragedy. 57. If you've ever felt a little claustrophobic in a car wash, this one's for you. A customer gave it 1 star because the giant attacking brushes were terrifying. They willingly drove into a machine designed to be a soapy mechanical beast, then got mad it wasn't a gentle spa day. 58. This one is a genuine agricultural mystery. A 1-star review for a packet of tomato seeds because nothing grew. The reviewer later confessed they planted them in a pot, put it in a dark closet, and then forgot to water them. The seeds didn't fail, the botanist did. 59. The logic here has completely left the building. Someone bought a French to English dictionary and gave it a single star. The reason? And I quote, "Half of this book is in French." They were genuinely angry that a bilingual translation tool contained both languages. 60. The irony is so thick you could build a house with it. A book on the philosophy of minimalism got a 1-star review for being too short. The person complained about a lack of content, completely missing the point so spectacularly it deserves some kind of award. 61. A can of black paint received a 1-star review from a user who was shocked that after painting their bedroom walls, the room was significantly darker. What was the expected outcome here? That the paint would know they just wanted a moody vibe and not literal darkness? 62. A pair of steel-toed work boots got 1 star after the user dropped a hammer on their foot. Their complaint was that the boot barely protected them. The fact that they still had toes to type the review with was apparently irrelevant. The boot won the battle but lost the PR war. 63. A 1-star review for a bag of fun-size candy bars. The user was absolutely outraged by the small portion, calling it false advertising and not fun at all. They were expecting a regular-sized chocolate bar experience for a fun-sized price, fundamentally misunderstanding the entire concept of both economics and portion control in one furious rant. 64. A brand new smartphone was savaged with a one-star review because the screen got covered in fingerprints. This person discovered the scientific principle that human skin has oils and that glass shows smudges, and they were absolutely furious about it. 65. A local fire department received a one-star review for making too much noise with their sirens during a late-night emergency. The reviewer was upset their sleep was disturbed. Sorry that someone else's house being on fire was a minor inconvenience to your REM cycle. 66. Some reviews make you question everything. A bag of ice got one star because it melted into a puddle after being left in a hot car for hours. This isn't just a review, it's a failed science experiment that they decided to make everyone else's problem. 67. You can't make this stuff up. A one-star review for waterproof pants because they made a swishing sound when the person walked. They wanted the magical ability to repel water, but they wanted it to be completely silent. Apparently, that's too much to ask. 68. A treadmill was deemed worthy of a single star because, in the user's words, it doesn't work unless you get on it and run. The expectation of an automated weight loss machine that requires zero effort is the American dream in its purest, most delusional form. 69. This might be the most human review ever. A one-star review for binoculars claimed they were broken because I can only see out of one eye. The manufacturer had to patiently explain that, yes, you are supposed to use both of your human eyes at the same time. 70. Going to a place famous for one thing and complaining about that exact thing is a special talent. A national park received a one-star review because there were too many trees blocking the view. This person went into a dense forest and was genuinely disappointed to find it full of forest. It's hard to imagine what a satisfying view for them would even be. Probably a freshly paved parking lot. 71. A smoke detector's only job is to scream at the slightest hint of trouble. So when one received a one-star review for being overly sensitive and loud, the user was not reviewing a product. They were complaining that it accurately detected the smoke from their burnt dinner. That's not a flaw. That's a job well done. 72. The simple physics of distance were too much for one person. They left a one-star review for a 25-foot extension cord, furious that it wasn't long enough to reach an outlet 50 feet away. They were genuinely baffled that 25 does not in fact equal 50. This is a failure of math, not manufacturing. 73. The eternal human struggle against physical labor is perfectly captured in this one-star review for a shovel. The user complained it made my back hurt and required too much effort. They didn't want a shovel, they wanted a magical dirt relocating wand. The tool wasn't the problem here. 74. A local botanic garden received a one-star review for a truly baffling reason: too many plants. The visitor was disappointed by the overwhelming amount of nature and the lack of open spaces. They went to a facility whose entire purpose is the cultivation and display of diverse flora, and were angry that it delivered exactly that. 75. Those wet paint signs are generally seen as helpful warnings. Not for this person. They left a one-star review for the sign itself, complaining that it was telling the truth, and they got paint on their new jacket. They tested the warning, failed, and then blamed the messenger. 76. Camping is supposed to be about embracing the elements. But one customer gave a high-end weatherproof tent a one-star review because it lacked central air conditioning. The expectation of having home-level amenities in the middle of the woods is a special kind of delusion. 77. In an age of automation, some people just aren't prepared for the past. A new owner of a manual transmission sports car gave it one star because constantly having to shift gears was a hassle. They bought a product specifically for the engaging, manual experience and then complained about it. 78. A good plot twist is supposed to be a surprise. But for one reader, it was a personal attack. They gave a thriller novel a one-star review because the ending was too unpredictable and didn't make any sense to me. They wanted a mystery that politely solved itself by chapter 3. 79. The entire point of a reusable water bottle is to, well, reuse it. That concept was lost on a reviewer who gave one a single star because it kept getting empty, and they had to refill it constantly. They have discovered the concept of liquid capacity, and they are not a fan. 80. A thesaurus is a book of options. For one user, that was terrifying. They gave it 1 star because it was confusing and offered too many alternative words. They bought a tool designed to expand their choices and were paralyzed by the sheer horror of having them. 81. The phrase, "some assembly required," strikes fear into many. For one person, it struck outrage. They left a 1-star review for a bookshelf because it arrived in pieces. They were furious that the product was exactly as described on the outside of the box. 82. What do you expect to find when you go to a vegan restaurant? According to one reviewer, it should be steak. They gave a popular vegan spot 1 star because the menu was full of vegetables and lacked any real meat. This is like going to an aquarium and complaining that it's too damp. 83. This isn't for a product, but a 1-star review for the entire country of Italy. The tourist complained about the overabundance of old buildings and was annoyed that everyone was speaking Italian. The sheer audacity of a foreign country to be foreign was simply too much to handle. 84. The pet rock was a novelty item whose entire feature was being a rock. That didn't stop someone from leaving a 1-star review decades later, complaining it was boring and didn't do any tricks. They were disappointed that their inanimate object was, in fact, completely inanimate. 85. An online glasses store received a scathing 1-star review from a customer claiming, "The prescription is totally wrong, I can't see a thing." The company's polite reply? "Sir, we use the exact prescription that you yourself provided to us." It was a classic case of blaming the mirror for the face. 86. Someone left a 1-star review for a simple salt shaker. Their stated reason was that the salt comes out too fast. They were furious that a gravity-fed dispenser with holes in the top dispensed things via gravity and holes. This is a complaint against personal motor skills, not the product. 87. Even children's events aren't safe. A parent gave a local spelling bee a 1-star review because the words were too difficult and it caused unnecessary stress. They fundamentally wanted a competition where the main challenge, spelling difficult words, was completely removed. 88. A set of adjustable dumbbells was given 1 star for a very simple reason. They are very heavy. The user was shocked that the objects, whose sole purpose is to provide weight for resistance training, were fulfilling their purpose with a little too much enthusiasm. 89. You'd think something as innocent as a rubber duck would be immune to criticism. You'd be wrong. One person gave it a 1-star review because it doesn't quack like a real duck. The desperate search for biological accuracy in a cheap bath toy is a truly noble and foolish quest. 90. It takes a special kind of entitlement to get angry at public safety infrastructure. A stop sign was given a 1-star review on Google because it caused a major delay and was inconveniently placed. This person was furious that a device, legally mandated to prevent deadly accidents, was a minor obstacle on their personal commute. 91. A high-security padlock was given a 1-star review by a user who promptly forgot their combination. After failing to open it, they had to use bolt cutters. Their final verdict? The product was too secure and poorly designed. They were literally angry at the lock for successfully doing its one and only job. 92. A fire extinguisher received a 1-star review for making a huge mess when it was used to put out a kitchen fire. The user was absolutely appalled by the white powder that covered everything, conveniently ignoring the fact that their house was no longer actively burning to the ground. Priorities, I suppose. 93. This one is a masterpiece of flawed logic. A learn-to-read kit for children got a 1-star review from a parent. The complaint was that the instruction manual required you to already know how to read. The idea that they, the literate adult, were the intended reader of the instructions was a bridge too far. 94. A silent meditation retreat was slammed with a 1-star review for being unfriendly and antisocial. The visitor was genuinely upset that nobody would talk to them during the mandatory 10-day vow of silence. They signed up for an event advertised for its complete lack of conversation and were offended by the results. 95. Even the Atlantic Ocean isn't safe from critique. A tourist left a one-star review complaining that the water was far too salty and the waves were unnecessarily loud and repetitive. They were also deeply disappointed by the general wetness. They stood at the edge of nature's majesty and decided to ask for a manager. 96. Someone bought a powerful new chainsaw and gave it a single star. Their complaints were that it was extremely noisy and vibrated too much. They also noted it was very dangerous if not handled properly. They purchased a tool that is essentially a motor-powered blade of death and were surprised it wasn't a quiet, relaxing experience. 97. It doesn't get much more ambitious than this. A one-star review for the U.S. Constitution. The reviewer called the historic document outdated and complained that the font is too small to read. They also mentioned a distinct lack of pictures, critiquing it like it was a badly designed restaurant menu. 98. A simple wall calendar was given a one-star review for a fundamental flaw. After December 31st, it just ends. The user was furious they had to buy a new one for the next year, calling it a total scam and a planned obsolescence scheme. They have officially declared war on the linear progression of time itself. 99. A disposable face mask was given a one-star review for making it difficult to breathe. This person was angry that a device specifically designed to filter the air before it enters your lungs was, well, filtering the air before it enters their lungs. The very feature designed to keep them safe was treated as a personal inconvenience. 100. A pair of high-end sunglasses received a one-star review for a shocking reason. They made everything look darker. This person put on a device engineered to reduce the amount of light reaching their eyes, and was then genuinely stunned by the outcome. Some battles, you just can't win. 101. And for the final exhibit, a one-star review for planet Earth itself. Found on an obscure forum, the user complained about excessive gravity, a repetitive day-night cycle, and faulty climate controls. They also noted that the other tenants are extremely loud. This person has officially run out of things to complain about. That was our tour through the spectacular wreckage of common sense. Now for the real debate. The comment section is officially a war room. Your mission is to pick the single most indefensible, brain-dead review from this list and crown it the absolute worst. I want to see factions form and arguments rage over which complaint represents the true rock bottom of human intelligence.